Hello and welcome to another episode of Rationable, the Rationable Podcast and the Rationable YouTube channel. And today we have a very interesting guest, somebody I met in Vegas when I went to the PsyCon conference. His name is Rob Palmer. He's an activist when it comes to skeptic activism against psychics, etc. And he apparently, I just found out, used to be an aerospace engineer. He used to design spacecrafts. So, of course, we'll do a full deep dive on that maybe in a different episode, but we are here to talk about something very special. But Rob, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. That's funny. Yes. So for the listeners, I just told Abhijit that I was invited on a podcast a few years ago to talk about psychics. And when they found out I designed spacecraft for my official career, that's all we talked about the whole podcast.
Unsurprisingly, as I retorted, but that is very interesting. But we have got to get on with some very interesting work that you've been doing, especially something called GAPPP.
The Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project.
Yes, exactly. And that is actually GAPPP.
Yeah. And I thought so cleverly, I had to give a name to my presentation at PsyCon. So I called it Mind the Gap, which Americans didn't. I ran it by people. Do you know what that means? No, what are you talking about? But it's a British, at least, expression.
Yeah. Mind the gap before you step onto a subway.
Yes.
So tell us more about what this is. What exactly are we doing here? What is the gap?
So the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, as it was dubbed by Richard Saunders of the Skeptic Zone.
We've had on the show before.
And you didn't talk about this with him, did you?
No, not at that point of time. I think it was still just a twinkle in his eye.
Okay. He's been working on it for 20 years or so probably not quite a twinkle, but he wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Maybe not quite that long. Maybe it was 10 years, but it's been a long time. Richard worked on this, collecting predictions from anything published in Australia by psychic people in Australia. And I'll have air quotes whenever I use the word psychic or medium in this presentation. He collected data, gathering all of their predictions that were made. And he set a time frame. It was going to be any predictions from the year 2020 going forward. And when he started, he didn't know how long he would go, but it wound up, he ended it with predictions from 2020. So from 2000 to 2020. So he did 21 years actually of predictions gathered.
Wow.
And while he was collecting them, he was slowly trying to score them. Okay, we'll put them in the database. How well did they come true? Did they not come true? But it's so much easier as to just spout nonsense than to actually verify whether the nonsense is true. So you can say, so-and-so and so-and-so is going to feel this way about something, or this is going to happen to the economy in this place or whatever. And now you have to go and try to figure out if that's true. And that's a hard thing to do. So he was making very slow progress in scoring all the predictions. And predictions wound up numbering close to 4,000.
Oh my goodness. And that's across how many psychics?
So 207 are in the database. 207 people with claiming some kind of paranormal clairvoyant ability who are either Australians or they predicted it in Australian media. So his criteria was he had to be able to capture it from Australian media or it was Australian themselves. And initially back in the days, pretty much when the internet had just gotten started, that meant going to national libraries, looking at microfilm, asking for copies of magazines they had collected, making photocopies, because he wanted a copy of everything in his own possession permanently, so that once these were scored, if people had a disagreement, you didn't have to go and find it again. So that was a lot of work for him to do this. And then he also found recordings from radio that were archived and TV shows, and then later YouTube. So he's got copies of everything. But he started to do the scoring. He got some help from the Australian Psychics group, which he was in, but it was going very slowly. Then the pandemic happened. That was a good thing regarding this because he was locked down. Couldn't even leave his house or his neighborhood, nothing much to do. Decided this is a good time to put his energies into finishing this project. And he realized, maybe other people could help. So he reached out to Susan Gerbeck, who's a skeptical activist, also spoke at PsyCon this year. She's very good at organizing people and putting things together. And she was already using Zoom a lot. So she decided, we can do this over Zoom. And she asked other people to volunteer, and I volunteered. That's how I got involved. We, as a group of people, went at this for over a year and a half, I think it was. Every single week, almost without a miss, we met for 2 hours. We collectively looked at all of the predictions. We used Google and other sources that we had finding information. and tried to find out how each of these predictions went down. Were they true? Were they not? And as we worked on the database, the actual number in Richard Saunders' set of predictions grew, because a lot of these psychics will make stream of consciousness predictions. This is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and this might happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And it's all 4 or 5 separate things, really. And so he originally had that listed as one thing because it was from one recording. So that one would become 4 or 5 or 6. That's why the absolute number went up. And then we would look at each of those independently. We probably spent something like 1,000 hours. I did a back of the envelope calculation at one point, scoring all of it, an amazing amount of time. And the idea was to score them all into certain categories. And a given prediction, the way Richard looked at it, was either correct, it was wrong, but it's more than just those 2 simple answers. It could also be expected, it could be too vague, or it could frankly just be unknown. The unknown category is like something was predicted about somebody's private life, even if it's a celebrity. There's no recording of this. How do you know that happened or not? So it just perpetually goes into unknown. Another category is people might die at a certain time in the future, or they won't. They'll live into their 90s, and then you look up their age, and then, their 90s is 10 years from now. So we don't know if that's true or not yet, right? It could be right, it could be wrong. It's also a very big window to give in a prediction, but sometimes that happens. By the way, most of the predictions that Richard collected were the kind that were given for the following year. So this happens a lot, right? In newspapers to fill column inches, they'll invite somebody on in late December, make predictions for this coming year, right? But sometimes they would go beyond that and open-ended.
The Skeptics Guide podcast does this every year as well. So they have a little baby version of this where they...
Exactly. Other skeptics groups have done that. And generally it's like for a few local predictions, they do maybe 5 or 10 or something like that. And is in a given year. Yeah. So we think this is the largest set of data, close to 4,000 over 2 decades, that's ever been done at one time. And when you're looking at data, the more you have, the better the ultimate result is. Any kind of tests, trials, or anything. Yeah, we feel pretty good about this. So the other kind of categories that we could score predictions in are, I mentioned expected. So that's a lot of the predictions these people make are not quite as bad as this, but pretty close. The sun's going to come up tomorrow morning. And they mark that as correct, as how great they are as a psychic. We didn't put that in the correct category, even though the sun did come up tomorrow. So we put that into expected. That's not even a prediction. Stop it. And then the other category was too vague. So this is stuff that you can read and it's wishy-washy and might also be unknown, but sometimes it's just, there's going to be an earthquake somewhere in the world. Okay. And then there's a debate. Is that expected? Yes. Is it too vague? Yes. So we had to decide which of those categories. But basically, those are a way of taking away obvious hits or retroactive hits where a psychic would say, yeah, see, look at that. I got that right. And really, no, that's not what you said. And only give them a score of correct on ones that were like, would be counted as, yeah, that's a true prediction. Right.
Wow. Okay. So you collected all of these, you went through all the data. What did you find?
Unsurprisingly, they weren't too accurate.
Mm.
So when you take away the vague ones.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. That's because you're not psychic. Yeah. So you take away those wishy-washy ones and the really expected ones and coin flip predictions. There were a lot of coin flip predictions. By the way, if the psychic makes all 50-50 predictions, by chance, they're going to be 50% correct. If you make all predictions on the World Series and the World Series is already running and there's only 2 teams playing, you're going to be 50%. They didn't have a lot of those, but there were some in the database which drove their percent up a little bit. But anyway, even counting all of those, the total number that we scored as correct was 11%.
11%.
A little tiny bit under 11%. So most predictions, almost 90 in the database, were a few percent were unknown, just 2. Expected were 15%. The vague ones were a little more than that, 18%. You combine expected, too vague, and unknown, and you're up there in the numbers. And then wrong was 53%, just flat out.
Oh my God. This is not even equivalent to chance, which is around 40%.
Yeah. It depends what kind of things you try to predict, right? Yes. If you try to predict sports events where there are only a few teams, you're going to be pretty high. If you want to guess a specific thing, like this city will be hit by an earthquake in this year, unless you're talking about Los Angeles, and you also express the magnitude because little earthquakes happen all over every place. So if you say there's going to be above a 7 in Los Angeles in 2010, All right, that would be a pretty on target prediction if that happened.
Mhm.
Although all the cities in the world, that would be one of the more likely ones that would happen. So one of the interesting things like that is we actually, of course, can look in our database and see the ones that they predicted that were just wrong and like how wrong they were. I can give you some examples if you'd like.
Yes, I was about to ask about that.
Yeah. So just like poking through at some of them, this is 2,000 predictions plus that were just plain out wrong. So in Australia, they're a Commonwealth country and they're somewhat obsessed with the British royalty. So there's a lot in there about those people. So there's
Yeah.
one prediction for the year 2000, Charles and Camilla will marry in this year or the next. So they gave themselves 2 years. No, it happened 5 years later. So wrong. Talks about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. They're also obsessed with celebrities, by the way, all over the world. Their relationship won't last another year. And this was made in 2007. Like did get divorced, but it was 11 years later. I see Sydney being hit by a rather large earthquake will cause a lot of damage within the next few years, somewhat open-ended, not just the 1 year, which was in 2013. But no, they've had no earthquake since 2013. So wrong.
They'd have a
So
higher chance of predicting somewhere in India because you get earthquakes.
yeah, we'll get to
Right.
that. We actually had, let's see if I can find that one. I'm looking at the wrong ones now. So in the expected category was there will be an earthquake somewhere in either India, Los Angeles, or Japan somewhere in the next few. Come on. Not
No
quite as
shit.
bad as the sun will rise tomorrow, but it's almost. So we're not giving you that as
Not.
correct.
These are some of the most earthquake active zones.
Exactly. They might have just, well, said there's going to be an earthquake in places where there are always earthquakes, but that's too
Right.
obvious. So they don't put it that way.
There's going to be volcanic activity in Hawaii.
Exactly. There was one, and actually it was wrong because they said there will be a dramatic large volcano, and that did not happen. Like that was minor. All right. So one of the really wrong ones I love was, I don't think authorities will catch Osama bin Laden next year. This was in 2005. I don't think they will ever catch him. I think it's likely he has had plastic surgery and is hiding his identity. So yeah, no.
So
Killed.
he's
in
coming back as
2009.
John F. Kennedy Jr.
There's no predictions about it. I don't know why. Yeah, they could have done that, but they didn't.
They're not
So
the same group, right?
Joe Biden will be nominated, but will drop out before the election. This was in 2020. Yeah, no.
Wow.
This is one of the most astounding ones. So often these people have no understanding of science, physics specifically, and they make predictions that sound ludicrous if anyone knows any science. And yet they don't have any qualms about doing it.
Well,
Kerry Culkins from 2001 said, using anti-gravity to lift heavy objects will become a reality instead of a dream.
wow.
Have you seen that on sale on Amazon yet, that you could buy a device to help you move your furniture?
Not yet, but I have seen some other freaky stuff on Amazon.
Yeah, I am surprised they're not selling it as a snake oil product. Summarizing all of that, Richard Saunders' quote on this was, these people were appallingly bad at predicting future events, and most of what was predicted did not happen, and most of what happened was not predicted. And I can tell you about that second part also. Yeah. So we decided, okay, if these people can predict like what people are, who are celebrities or in the monarchy or whatever, feel like they're going to have for lunch the next day, and what's going to happen in someone's personal life regarding a divorce or not, you'd think they would be good at seeing huge, amazing things which are going to rip the space-time continuum and change history on Earth. That should be an easy thing. But we went through the database of the years, which was, again, 2000 to 2020. And we went to Wikipedia, and for every single year, there's a list of historic events. So we pulled out 10 for each year. So we have 210, the most significant historic events, missed predictions that nobody in our database said anything about. So this is embarrassing. And they're international, they're from local there in Australia, just all over the place in all different categories. So some examples, starting with the first year of the database, 2000, there was a historic stalemate in the US presidential election, and the Supreme Court decided who was president for the first time ever. No, and they're always talking about the presidency. Didn't see that coming. A local thing in Australia, a century-wide, longest 100 year, worse than 100 years drought in Australia in 2002. They're always talking about a little bit of rain in Australia or this or whatever. They didn't see that one coming. NASA's disaster, the Space Shuttle Columbia burns up on reentry. Only the second time astronauts were lost in flight. Didn't see that coming. The Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami from December 26, 2000, killing 250,000 people, 14 countries. Literally the largest natural disaster in recorded history besides Noah's Ark.
You count that.
Yeah. No, nobody saw that one coming.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes on and on. People dying, they're always talking about predicting people's death. Michael Jackson dying at age 50. Nope, didn't see that coming. Largest earthquake ever recorded, 8.8 in Chile in 2010. Nope. And double disaster, the 2011 tsunami that triggered a nuclear disaster in Japan. Nope, missed that. Yeah, it's astounding. And as I mentioned, they're obsessed with the British royal family.
Yes.
They had prediction after prediction about Queen Elizabeth II because, she's getting on in years. Oh, she's going to retire this year. She's going to die this year. She's going to pass it on to Charles this year. Every year they predicted it. And there's not
Waited until the
one
end of the
prediction.
GAPPP project.
There is not one prediction in the database about Queen Elizabeth II retiring or dying that got it right. Nobody predicted her correct year.
Oh, man. That is a lot of egg on faces that we shouldn't really turn into omelet because that's something.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, with that being the case, this hasn't been presented in this degree before, but still, there are the other sources you mentioned. The Skeptic's Guide goes through it. Occasionally, people will talk about this in local clubs. Why do people still believe in these people?
That's what I don't understand. I think it's probably some innate sense of having control over chaos. I think that is, from my perspective, that seems to be like a core reason why a lot of people believe in a lot of supernatural things and being able to understand, say, religion for that matter, understanding, like making sense of the world. We have the pagan religions, Hinduism being a polytheistic religion where we have a lot of elemental gods and a lot of gods that apply to practically every aspect of our lives. Because if we believe that if we pray enough, if we give enough money at the temples, something will happen, something beneficial will happen. We will have control over the chaos. And I think that is one primary reason why a lot of people would believe stuff. A lot of these pseudoscientific, superstitious things like fortune tellers and psychics and being able to predict the future, and even astrology, that kind of goes without saying. We look up astrology trying to figure out what's going to happen in our lives, what should we do, what should we not do over a completely uncertain future, which we have absolutely no control over. We humans hate not being able to control things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Basically what you're saying, it's a just natural human tendency. And then the problem is in the regard of the psychic realm, it's reinforced by it being shown on TV and written in newspapers. And I don't know about in India, but in America, a lot of cable stations have their own medium they promote and have shows every year. And they're not promoted as entertainment. They're promoted as these people can do these things. So it's, wow, it's on television. How could this not be true? I wouldn't say politician, but he just lost his race. So maybe that's done. Dr. Mehmet Oz ran for the U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, and he's somebody who has his own show. He's a cardiac surgeon. So you can't be too dumb to be a cardiac surgeon. But he has his own TV show for a very long time, promoted by Oprah Winfrey, which is what got him famous. Promotes all sorts of quack stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a clip of him promoting psychics on his show. He's introducing 3 or 4 women. He says the things they have in common, the thing these women all have in common is they're all psychic. Now, he doesn't say they'll claim to be psychic. Let's explore this. This is a cardiac surgeon just saying these women are all psychic. And then he gives them sit down to talk about it, and they show their powers. And he just eats it up and throws it out. Whether he personally believes it, I don't know. But he certainly knows it got him views because people like this.
And to think that he had such a level of power, so much influence, and to be promoted by Oprah to such an extent and to be given that platform. If I had that kind of luck in my life, I would have used every ounce of my energy and the time that I had in the public eye promoting things that were true. But he has completely gone over to the other side where I honestly think that somebody who's a cardiac surgeon can't possibly believe all the stuff that he's selling, but he got greedy and he's just making hay while he still got it.
It's hard to know. It's hard as a people to look into people's hearts. From our side of the fence, it's hard to imagine that being the case. But in reality, even if you have a degree in a certain science, especially medicine, you're not really taught to be a critical thinker. You're learning facts. This is what we understand about anatomy in the human body, and this is the kind of medicines that we know work for this and this. But not rational thinking and critical thinking and logical fallacies. What I understand now is I don't necessarily assume somebody is being fraudulent if they have that mindset. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and think they are a victim of bad thinking.
I agree with you. And in most cases, I have a feeling that may be the case because I recently had this conversation with Janice Boynton.
Yes, I heard that. I heard that with facilitated communications.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And to think that she, who is an otherwise perfectly good natured, well intentioned person who could deceive herself into thinking that she could do facilitated communication and then understanding that she was wrong and taking the morally correct thing to do that could have been done and not only owning up to it, but becoming an activist in the field of debunking that practice.
Absolutely.
I asked her a very similar question. Do you think there are people who knowingly are doing this just to mislead people? And I mentioned James Randi and a lot of the debunking that he did of psychics, of fortune tellers, of tarot card readers, and all sorts of things. I'm sure a lot of those people actually believe that they have these skills because I know people who genuinely think that they can read palms and tell the future. And they say that it's an amazing skill that they've managed to pick up. They've learned about it, they've studied about it, and they've managed to do well. And I honestly believe that they believe that to be true. Even if they're using things like cold reading to be able to subconsciously understand where a person is and what could be plausibly true about their lives and about their futures, they honestly believe it. But then there are still people who are knowingly who have been in a position of understanding the evidence and of evaluating it and have seen the evidence and still promote it unequivocally. Like, who is the person in Syracuse University that Janice was talking about?
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but she did. I do remember her saying, yeah, she believes that people at some level at the university do realize it, and they don't want to look at the data that disproves it because they don't want to stop doing it.
Exactly. And they have been instructing facilitated communicators to not test it, to not question it. That's superstition in a box when you're told.
Yeah, I know I know Janice, so we've talked about this at length too, and I asked her about that. That's amazing. How can somebody say, I believe this is working, but you can't test it? Like, why would you do that? As you've talked about before, falsifiability is important to determine if something is true.
Absolutely.
So in their minds, they come up with the thing is cognitive dissonance, right? They believe it works, and therefore, if you test it and it doesn't work, there has to be a reason for that. And their reason is, and they say it, you're stressing out the client. It's not the normal circumstances. They come up with reasons why that's a bad thing to do because they don't want to do it. So that supports their goal of not doing it. But they think the reasons they're coming up with are reasonable.
Absolutely. And after a point, I think you just dig yourself into such a hole that you would become excommunicated from the community you've become a part of. And
Big deal, right? Big deal. I don't know if you've
Barry-
discussed flat Earth views on your podcast, but yeah, if you watch the documentary on the subject, which I highly recommend, Behind the Curve, that documentary explores why these people believe it, and it shows, like you were talking about, Evergy, that it's become their reason for existence. It's their own social circle. And if someone has a revelation, oh, wait a minute, as boats go over the horizon, they do go down. And if you express that out loud, you're thrown out of the community and you've lost your friends. You've lost in real life or on social media, wherever you have groups of friends, you're now the enemy. So you turn a blind eye, maybe even subconsciously, to that kind of evidence. So the other reason that people believe these people, going back to the psychics, so it's personal belief. I want to believe in this kind of thing, as you mentioned, because it makes me feel good that there's this otherworldly thing. Also, you're special because people who don't believe this are wrong, have special knowledge that, yeah, this is real. Then there's the thing we're talking about. You don't want to be thrown out of the club because a lot of people believe this, and why shouldn't I? And then it's on television, it's promoted in the media. And maybe one of the other things, if you follow one of these psychics, they say they're accurate and you already believe them as a person. You trust them. Yeah. So Kerry Culkins is in our database a lot, and she's one of the psychics who has her own website, and she puts her predictions every year up there, and you say, it's brave of her. And I'm looking at, and I showed in my presentation, predictions for 2001 as an example. And she's got about 20 on the screen, and she checks off every single one of them, all but 2 on this page. I would say it's 18 of 20 that are checked off as correct. And it's quite amazing because she's the one who predicted that using the anti-gravity was going to become a reality in 2001. And that's checked off as correct.
How is that even like what?
I know. And if you think that's just as well, she made a mistake there. It's a kind of a typo. No, the one right above it is we may soon be able to get free energy from empty space by harnessing the electromagnetic fields.
Oh, God.
If you're a follower of hers and you look at this, wow, look at this. She's 98% right.
Each one of those should point to some sort of evidence, but I'm sure they don't.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's another page I don't have listed here with a citation. Yeah.
Oh, I would have loved to have anti-gravity. Wouldn't we all? I would be a fighter.
Star Trek and Star Wars in real life.
Oh, the dream come true. As we are all fans of that sort of stuff, aren't we? And as Carl Sagan's famously said, and we love this saying, is extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And we have seen absolutely none of it. And especially these psychics, this should be easy to really verify.
As I've said at the end of my presentations on this subject, okay, being an actual card-carrying skeptic, and yes, I do have a business card which says skeptic. I have to have the caveat then. I have to say that maybe someone or some people are actually psychic out there that we didn't have the data for. You can't disprove something like this by looking at any particular set of data. But no one has ever proved they can do this. There are ways to prove this, as you're alluding to, and no one has ever stepped forward to do. Any kind of paranormal powers are open to being proved by various paranormal challenges. They're all over the world. There's actually a page in Wikipedia called List of Prizes for Evidence of the Paranormal. You can look at that up. I added it up one day. It's about $1 million. The largest individual one is for the organization that I write for the magazine for, the CFI, Center for Inquiry. $250,000 prize if you can prove you have psychic or any other paranormal ability, and no one has ever claimed it. Before this, there was a $1 million paranormal prize for decades by James Randi until James Randi died. People think they can, they apply for it, they agree to the test terms because they think they're psychic, and they think they can douse for water, they think they can bend items, they think they can whatever. And you put them to a test and wow, they can't do it. Amazing.
I remember the Uri Geller video, which is now up on YouTube. I'll see if I can find it and put a link in the description here of who was the talk show host who had Uri Geller on?
So Johnny Carson, I actually added all of this information to 4 Wikipedia pages. The Johnny Carson one, The Tonight Show, Uri Geller, and James Randi, because it was such a big event.
Yes, so, of course, there is the Gorilla Skeptics, but I will talk to Susan about that so I can tell people about it. Because I have to have her on. Hopefully this.
Yeah, absolutely. She'd be a great guest. So Johnny Carson was really a skeptical person, a talk show host for decades in the United States. One of the most watched shows called The Tonight Show. And Uri Geller was coming up as a mystic who could bend spoons and fix watches just by having people look at their TV sets when he was on and concentrate. And he was going to come on The Tonight Show, and Johnny Carson reached out to James Randi and said, I'm going to have this guy. What do you think about him? He said, okay. He set up a test for him this way. And James Randi gave him the insight, and his team put the test apparatus in front of him. When Geller came on and sat down, all the test stuff is on the desk in front of him. And said, we're going to do a little test tonight. And I don't think he was expecting it. I've seen this video from his reaction. Oh, okay. And he had no insight into what was going to be done. He hadn't touched any of this stuff. And after the commercial break, he came back and he tried to do stuff and he couldn't do anything. And of course, I have bad powers today. I'm tired. So this is all
not feeling the energy.
No, but the bad thing, Abhijit, is that this made his career. Most people don't know that.
Really? How the hell did that happen?
Yes. And this is documented in the Wikipedia article. So he was about to quit. He went home. He was almost suicidal, if I recall the way he put it, because he thought, I put my foot in it. This is the end of me. And then very soon after that, I think it was the next day, he was invited on another show, and it was a bigger show. It was like a news show, and he did his stuff. And so it was seen as, well, if he was fake, he could do it all the time. But if he's real, you would have problems sometimes. So he spun it that way, that this made it seem more like he was the real deal. And his career took off after that.
That is so crazy. That is some gymnastic.
Yeah. So let me give you a more modern gymnastic. There's this guy named Thomas John. His full name is Thomas John Flanagan. He's got a Wikipedia article. You can look him up. Susan Gerbic, the aforementioned Greek vampire hunter. So Thomas John is a medium. He's had TV shows, so he's a famous person. He's had 2 different TV shows on 2 different US networks. And his thing is he can talk to dead people and they talk back to him, and he's a channeler to give the people he's reading what their dead relatives are saying. So Susan and the Guerrilla Skeptics team did a sting on him, which was so successful that it was written up in the New York Times. So she and Mark Edward went in undercover. They had false names. They bought the tickets with false names. They pretended they were a married couple with different names, and they had fake Facebook accounts with those names that other people had put together for them, giving them a whole background of people in their lives who died. And when they got into the studio, and luckily Thomas John called on them and gave them a reading, he was reading back all the fake stuff on their Facebook page like it was from their dead relatives who didn't exist. And this was recorded and reported on in the freaking New York Times Magazine, tens of millions of readers, right? Within a year, Thomas John was the headline act at Caesar's Palace. With that in his past, Caesar's Palace still gave him the headline spot to be their show, the Thomas John Experience, something like that. And then he got another TV show. He had the first TV show before this happened, and then he got another TV show. So James Randi's comment on this was unsinkable rubber ducks.
Absolutely. I have a different term than rubber ducks, but I won't mention that here.
Oh, I'd like to hear. Why not?
Floaters.
Oh, analogical. Okay.
But that almost makes you feel like, why are we doing this? We're actually making people more famous, but we can't give up, can we? And so
well, yeah, it's an interesting thing. If there was a double-blind experiment with another Earth that was exactly parallel, and there was one Earth with skeptics on it pushing back, and another Earth with no skeptics at all, which would be worse? This is one of those things where we don't have the data, because you can't have the data, but just
I can tell you, in India is, I think we do have a lot of skeptics. We have what are called, otherwise we call them rationalists. One of the reasons why this channel is called Rationable. But the problem is we've got a lot of pseudoscience. We've got a lot of supernatural belief pervading our population, going across borders, across classes and castes. And there have been very intrepid rationalists and skeptics who have done a lot of activity to counter that. And in fact, Richard Saunders came to India a while back in the 80s or 90s, and he was actually a part of that. And he came to one of the Indian conferences about these things, which I wish I'm going to be a part of something, I hope soon. Or maybe I need to revive that, skeptics conferences in this country. But there's a movie out actually, which unfortunately right now there isn't any legitimate streaming platform that one can find it on, but it's called Guru Busters. And I watched that, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's Indian skeptics who are going out into the villages, out into congregations where these gurus are performing, where they're performing miracles, where they're supposedly bringing dogs back from the dead and performing all sorts of these things. And they go right ahead in front of these people and say that these people are absolutely fake. They're pulling the wool over our eyes. The tricks are, we can perform these tricks just as well as they can. And they actually demonstrate them. But unfortunately, we have such a massive population that and we still have a relatively small number of skeptics doing this kind of activism out there. We definitely need more of us getting out there and actually doing things to counter this kind of pseudoscience. And hopefully, there are a growing number of skeptics, especially creating content on YouTube, like Science is Dope, like Vimo, who I have also interviewed. And there are some communities out there. So there is hope. We just want more people to join up.
So one last thing I want to get back to on the psychics is it matters that people believe this. But as a segue for that is, a lot of people believe this stuff. And at least because everyone in the US practically speaks English, right? It's not a segmented population regarding reaching them. And that situation is just so much worse in your country. Yeah. So the reason this matters is, so there was a survey by the Pew organization back in 2018, looking at how many Americans believe in paranormal and other things like that. And there's one particular piece I took out to show them in my presentation on psychics. And it's okay, how many believe in psychics? So of all US adults, it's over 40%, 41 or 2%. It's almost half. So almost half of any average person you talk to believes in it. And they broke it down by religiosity regarding Christian religions for some reason. I don't know why they didn't go into other ones. So there's all different forms of Christianity. And like the highest one is Catholic, which is 46%, almost half. And evangelical Christians are the least because they're told it's from the devil, but they're just above 30. But this is the scary part. Someone reported in the survey that you were nothing in particular. It was 52%, higher than religious people. The only group, self-identified atheists, that was a low number, was 10. Now, that's disturbing to me. 1 out of 10 atheists believes this too, frankly, but at least it's not 40 or 50.
Yeah, absolutely. There are always people who haven't really distinguished rational thinking from at least the lack of religiosity with skepticism at this point of time, because there are people who leave religion for other reasons as well, except other than thinking oneself out of it or rationally thinking about the world around us.
So just finalizing my thought there, the reason it's important is because that many people believe in this, and those are US numbers. I have no reason to believe it's a less percent anywhere else, including India. And the problem is this leaves people open to being taken advantage of drastically. In my previous talk to SciCon, which was the last conference, which was 2018 before the pandemic, talked about what's the harm in believing in psychics. And I talk about people who become victims of con artists who take them for literally their life savings. And that could be tens of thousands of US dollars or millions in some cases. And it is so heartbreaking to hear this. These con artists, they have a street corner in your neighborhood, Psychic Maria, come first reading is free. And if you believe this, you might go and do that. And then they get you for everything that they can take you for. And if you're the kind of person who's desperate and you need help and you believe in this, and this person does a magic trick that convinces you they are in fact real, or does a really good cold reading or even a hot reading because they had your name in advance, they can do anything they want to you. And the stories are horrendous. If anyone wants to Google it or go to Wikipedia, you can look at the article for the private detective Bob Nygaard, Nygard. He retired from the police force. And then by a series of happenstances you can read about in the article, he got pulled into trying to help victims of psychic cons. And this is what he does. And much of his page is taken up by the very newsworthy, because they were big dollar figures, victims that he's helped. And it's unbelievable what people will believe and how much money they will give these people because they believe in psychic powers. And that's the sad thing. And I know Bob, I've interviewed him numerous times and I've heard details of his work. And he gets more calls than he can handle. He's not in an agency. He's one individual. And as far as he knows, no one else does this in the whole US, devotes themselves to helping victims of psychic con artists. And he tells me 4 or 5 calls a day that he has to turn away.
Goodness.
Those are only the people who've contacted him. Many people who get taken don't reach out because they're embarrassed about it or haven't found him or anyone else. And I don't know about in India, but the legal system in the US is horrendous for this. Because you go into a police office and try to file the grievance or whatever and say, oh, no one held a gun to your head. Why'd you give them the money? It's not a crime, even though it is. So you have the police refusing to arrest. If you get it to the point where that doesn't happen and they do arrest them, it's a question of whether a prosecutor is going to prosecute it, whether you think they can win the case. And then often, even if that happens, it's give them the money back and we'll let you go. And then the person goes right back to their store and keeps ripping people off. It's a horrendous situation in America. And I would just guess it's that way in most of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, not only do we have psychics who are doing that sort of thing, but we have a lot of these gurus and yogis who are taking advantage of people's grief, who are taking advantage of people's hopelessness and susceptibility and vulnerability rather, and just milking it for everything that it's worth. When there are people like that, there are these parasites all over the world in every single country, and they're making a ton of money off people's grief, which is horrible.
Yeah, in the US, there's an organization called the American Federation of Certified Psychics and Mediums. If you're a psychic medium, you can join them. I don't know what the perks are, but it's like any organization like that. Clearly not everyone who works in that practice is a part of them. But in just their business, they have their clients, the people registered, tell them $2 billion.
Wow.
And that's, if someone's going to pay you in cash under the table, you probably didn't report it to your agency. It's probably just the things that went to a credit card, I would bet. So my guess is the $2 billion is the tip of a much bigger iceberg.
Absolutely.
And they also list what the average pay of these psychics are. And I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it sounds like I'm giving career advice to people who don't know what to do with their lives. But the average psychic makes up to 150,000 US dollars a year. A reasonably successful psychic, $500,000. And the names that you see on television all the time, 5 million.
Oh my God.
These are not the people who are ripping people off of their life savings, right? These are people who just have an outfit and charge $100 for a reading, whatever. The amount of money that's scammed must be astronomical, literally, because, as I said, people don't report it. It's often up to their life savings, and they certainly wouldn't be reporting it to this agency, the Certified Federation of Psychics and Mediums. And when these people get caught enough, they go and they change their name and they open up in a different town. There's one case that Bob Nygaard had where he tracked this person for 10 years, going different states, constantly being arrested and let go with different names. It's horrifying what goes on. And we could put a stop to this if we could convince people that there's no reason to believe anybody has psychic powers, but what's the chance of that?
That's what we're here for. That's what we're
here to try to do.
So how can we help with the GAPP? I feel like we should do something like this in India.
I think that would be a fantastic idea. So the problem is you'd have to find another way to limit it. Like Richard was okay with saying, I will take every psychic prediction made in Australia by Australians. But the population of Australia is something like, I'm going to guess, order of magnitude of 38 million people, which is like Florida, one of our U.S. states. And India's got how many billion people? If you proportion the number of psychics and seers practicing, you'd have to find some other way of doing it. Otherwise, you would need a team of 10,000 skeptics working for a year to get.
I'm going to put that idea out there. And if you're watching right now, and if you think you know a few psychics and you've got a few predictions down, let me know. Get in touch with me. Put it in the comments. And let's start this thing. Let's light this candle, as they say. And I love to start, at least have something. Maybe have it a localized kind of thing, like maybe just in Delhi or just in Mumbai.
Yeah, that would be cool.
And just see what happens. I'm sure a lot of these psychics wouldn't have websites and have these predictions out in public. So maybe there's a shot. Maybe we can do this. And I'll be in touch to figure out how to get all the logistics and the numbers and the...
Yeah, when you have Susan on, you can talk about that. I'm sure she would be thrilled to help.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But this is an amazing initiative. Like when I was watching your presentation, I was blown away. I was like, every country needs to do this. Every single country needs to do this.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Absolutely. It'll be the global, well, then you lose the A, right? It's not the Australian anymore, but the global PPP, the Psychic Prediction Program. Is there anything else that you want to add on to this? Any funny, weird, quirky things that you might have found in the process of this program?
No. I just want to thank you for having me on and helping spread the word to the other hemisphere. Yeah, I've talked about this in the US on several places, including the podcast. People there like the Thinking Atheist, by the way, Seth Andrews' podcast.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Richard Saunders and I were interviewed about this on there earlier in the year. So you can check out that episode. We didn't go into as much detail as I went today, but you might find the discussion interesting, especially because Richard, who ran the project, is on that broadcast.
And if you guys want to know more about Rationable, go to www.berationable.com. I would greatly appreciate it. You can check out the Rationable Podcast and the YouTube channel, which is called Rationable, very simply, where all these interviews are also put up in video form. And if you want the transcripts, again, berationable.com. And if you have any questions, you can send them to me at Abhijit, that's ABHIGIT, at berationable.com. Or you can just go to the website and throw in a comment or fill out the form. So thanks again. See you guys in the next episode.